Hi, I'm Jason Inman.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And welcome to Crisis Club. Yes, part 1 of Crisis Club. This is where the series that we're going to be diving into each issue of the famous DC Comics event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. This one right here, because we're going to be looking for Easter eggs. We're going to be giving you theories, all leading up to the giant DCTV crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this video will only really make sense if you've read Crisis on Infinite Earths. So if you haven't, we have lots of links around. We have links on our Patreon, we have links on our website, we have links on our Twitter, links on the YouTube. So go to those links, get your copy of Crisis on Infinite Earths. A little bit comes back to the Mine University, but also so you can read along, because we will be referring to direct pages
and panels
in this. So Ashley, this is Crisis on Infinite Earths. We're gonna start with issue 1. It was called The Summoning. It was written and edited, interestingly, he edited himself. Marv Wolfman, the creator of the New Teen Titans.
Oh, there's a debate to be had there.
Yes, it was penciled by the wonderful George Perez, inked by Dick Giordano, lettered by Tony Tomlin, and then also the plot was by Wolfman, Robert Greenberger, and the astounding Len Wein.
That's right. May he rest in peace.
This was published in April of 1985. Now, first we're going to get into some production history of this book. Now, Ashley, you got a little bit of production history for us, I know.
I do have a little bit of production history. So, Marv Wolfman talks a lot about what led him to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it starts when he was a little tiny human wanting to write comic books, much like you and I and most of the people who are...
not that tiny.
Well, you were tiny once.
Sure.
Who are here supporting us in Crisis Club. And when he was a tiny human, he wanted a character who was omnipotent and all-powerful, and he called him the Librarian, which I have to say, I think is an awesome
Unlike
name.
the Noah Wiley show.
Yes. And his idea was that the librarian, because a librarian has control of books, would be able to control all of these comic book heroes. Then many moons later, he got to write for DC Comics.
Many worlds later.
Many worlds later, that rose and fall. He was in a position where he was going to be writing Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he needed a character to fill that role, and he returned to the idea of the librarian, changed the name, made him a little scarier, gave him a weirder haircut, and that became the Monitor.
Now, we're going to talk about the Monitor a lot, because he is kind of the crux of this, and as you know, if you've been watching the DCTV shows, he showed up in the Elseworlds crossover.
As played by LaMonica Garrett.
Yes. Now, there is some stuff to lead up into Crisis on Infinite Earths. The original title of Crisis on Infinite Earths was called History of the DC Universe. Now, the big reason why it was called History of the DC Universe is because 1985, the 50th anniversary of DC Comics.
Yeah.
So now Marv says this specifically, and I'm going to quote Marv. He said, part of the pitch of Crisis was that it was going to be from January 1985 to December of 1985, the whole 50th anniversary year. Then in January of 1986, we were supposed to start every book new with a number 1. And Marv Wolfman says that he fought for that so long. But Dick Giordano, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, in his autobiography said that the only mistake he made in his entire career at DC Comics was they didn't do that. But Dick Giordano said that he regretted doing that, but the reason that they didn't do that is because at the time, as editor-in-chief, he didn't think that they actually had a good enough talent pool to recreate every title from scratch.
Ooh, that's rude!
Yep.
I wanted to say that DC has had several reboots since Crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of opens the door for this. And several times they've stated that they are starting over from 1. They never do.
No.
So I just think it's interesting that not only does the history in the event repeat itself, but the meta narrative of like, we're starting over again also repeats itself every time.
We also have to give a shout out to somebody that is very important with the creation of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that name is Pete Sanderson. Now, he came onto the DC staff about 3 years before Crisis on Infinite Earths, basically to read every DC comic that was ever published.
What a dream.
Now, yeah, it's basically what we do for Geek History Lesson. But because the Geek History, because the DC Universe Geek History was so massive, they needed somebody to basically make notes and have a roadmap, because as you'll see as we jump into the first issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths, it is so dense. There is stuff in this book that before I did all the research for this video, I didn't even know.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's literally only getting more complicated
Yep.
after this issue.
So you want to buckle up? Let's go into the first issue?
Okay.